केमिस्ट्री के टेस्ट में कितना मिला तो बहुत कम मिला
मुझे एंड ए
नहीं दिया तुमने इसका अजीब है बहुत ये
क्यों मेरे
हमको 2 बार एग्जाम है
बीमार
मैंने टेस्ट दिया नहीं एग्जाम में बैठ गया मेरा हमेशा लिस्ट में नाम रहता है
सबसे ज्यादा
हमको 2 साल की टेस्ट में हो गई
दो पे
हमको 2 बार ये तो चॉकलेट केक और 30
समस्या तो वो कैसे छोटा हो सकता है
बड़ा ब्रांच
अरे उनको एग्जाम में
भाई टीम टेस्ट है मैंने केमिस्ट्री के लिए ट्राई नहीं था
मेरे को 20
मैंने मैथ्स से
आ गया
तुमने बोला मेरे बहुत
आरसी
तुम नहीं थे ना कोई नहीं था
ये था 70
एक सेकंड हम 4 लोगों ने टेस्ट किया हम 4 में मैंने सिर्फ केमिस्ट्री का
सिर्फ तुम चार
हाँ ये प्रशंसा मैंने हम दोनों देखी अरे संजय को सिर्फ केमिस्ट्री का इससे बस केमिस्ट्री का है चीटिंग है ये कितना
हमको 2 बार टेस्ट में ये एनालिटिकल
अरे
केमिस्ट्री
इससे बस केमिस्ट्री का फिजिक्स वाली हाँ बस केमिस्ट्री का फिजिक्स को मंडे को नेक्स्ट बार डायरेक्ट
ले हां डेटा 10% डिडक्ट
डायरेक्ट होता है कुछ भी
ये यहां मेरे को 20
कुछ भी यार मुझे 15 में से 14 आया मैथ्स में लेकिन 10% नहीं डिडक्ट
राउंड ऑफ
नहीं हुआ
13.5 राउंड ऑफ
हां कितना है मैट्रिक्स है
मैट्रिक्स से प्रोबेबिलिटी
13.5 ना बराबर
उसमें 14 आए हैं सर
14 आया मुझे नहीं
10% निकाल दे
मतलब एक मात्रा गलत था कुछ
हाँ एक मात्रा गलत
मैं करता है बोला
पूछिए
करेक्ट होगा बस
सारा टेस्ट ही लिखते हैं टेस्ट ही लिखता है उस दिन हम लोग पूरा उज्जवल तो लिख रहा था इसका तो बोल सकते हैं उज्जवल तीनों टेस्ट लिखा था तीनों टेस्ट मैंने क्यों नहीं लिखा लेकिन मुझे तो लिखने पर भी मुझे नहीं देखा पोजीशन है नहीं कोई तो पूरा
या फिर तेरा कोई गलत
हुआ एक गलत
देखिए अभी मैं देने वाला हूं नहीं मैंने पूछी वो यहां हां
What are we studying? Circulatory system. Okay. Which part? Structure of the heart we have started, no? Structure of the heart. Where did we reach? Till where did we reach? Structure of the heart. Now let us continue. Whose birthday? Your birthday. Oh, yes, ma'am. Happy birthday. Thank you. What happened? Alright, then help the birthday girl. No, see.
No. अरे बॉटल ही रखो बॉटल
I think I'm seeing Joanna's face for the first time.
In the online time, I used to keep my.
Online तो hardly.
No, ma'am, I used to attend all the classes in online.
No, hardly your videos used to go on also. ज़्यादातर video off ही रहता था. One of your friend gone video, ना? 2 of them are absent today. Who else? Only these 2? Who? Rudresh. This boy who went for the birthday. Let him come. Now, structure of the heart. Let us continue. We had already completed with which part? We had already completed with. We must have done some questions from the first part, no? We had done some questions from the first part. Okay. Now, structure of the heart. Just check how much we have done. Structure of the human heart. So first is we were talking about chambers, the chambers of the heart. What about the chambers of the heart? What did I explain you about the chambers of the heart? The upper chambers are known as auricles. The walls of the auricles are thick. What is the reason?
Because they only receive blood.
The walls of the auricles are thin. What is the reason?
They only receive
blood and
have to pump
the
blood to
force
the
of
ventricle.
contraction is mild. Why the force of contraction is mild? Because they have to
Pump the blood to ventricle.
only to the next chamber, ventricle. And when we are talking about the auricles, the right auricle receives what type of blood?
Oxygen.
Deoxygenated. The right auricle receives deoxygenated blood. And now that we are talking about the right auricle receives blood from where? From the whole body, from the body tissues. The right auricle receives deoxygenated blood from the body tissues by the way of vena cava. And already you had studied 2 types of vena cava. If I talk about the inferior receives blood from lower body parts. What is the other name for inferior? Inferior. What is the other name for inferior? Posterior or post cable. And superior, pre-cable or anterior vena cava. Pre-cable or anterior. When I talk about the aorta rises from. Did we talk about the valves the other day? Valves did we finish? I think only the chambers we must have finished.
Yes,
vessels also. Chambers are we done? Chambers already, I think we are already done with chambers. And next is we talk about after chambers. Now, did we answer that question? Why the wall of the left ventricle is the thickest? Because it has to come. Force of contraction is more. The force with which it contracts, the force of contraction is more because it has to push the blood or it has to supply blood to the furthest regions of the body. So that is your answer that you will try. Next is we talk about what is the job of the pulmonary artery?
To carry deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs.
From where? Which region of the heart?
From the right ventricle to the lungs.
From the right ventricle to the lungs. And now that we are talking about that, the blood from the lungs enters into the left auricle. What type of blood? Oxygenated. How many pulmonary veins per lung? 2. Per lung, 2. From each lung, now that I talk about the right lung, 2. Left lung, another 2. And total, how many pulmonary veins enter the left auricle? 4. So a total of 4 of them, 4 pulmonary veins would enter. So this is roughly about the chambers that we should know. Next is we talk about the vessels. What are the vessels? Just find out if you are done with this part. Vessels, now that I talk about, what about the vessels you are supposed to understand? Vessels, if I understand, mainly come across so the vessels that we have been talking about, what were the vessels? Primarily, if I understand the vessels associated with the heart only, What are the four vessels associated with the heart? The first is the vena cava. Just now we discussed about the vena cava. Second is the aorta. From where does it arise? What does it carry? That you have to remember. Third is we talk about the pulmonary artery. We talk about the pulmonary artery and the pulmonary vein. So these are the four main vessels that you have to understand with reference to the heart. Pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein, the differences in their type of blood that they carry and from where to where they connect, which part of the body do they connect. So that you have to remember. Pulmonary artery connects the right ventricle to the lungs, pulmonary vein just the opposite. The lungs to the left auricle. Okay. So now the aorta, vena cava, pulmonary artery, and the vena cava, the pulmonary vein. So now if we have to summarize, we would say what are the different types of the vessels that we are understanding? The types of the vessels that we are understanding are what? Arteries as one type, and then the vessels. The veins as another type. And we have got the capillaries as the other type. So what would be the relation if I have to summarize and their structures to understand? Their structures basically to understand would be a particular diagram that you have to draw here. Take out your pencils, all of you. Let's try drawing this diagram. A diagram about the oh my god, how many songs does it say? Oh god, gone. Whose is that? Sohan. पानी भर के लेके आता है वो. So first let us try drawing the structure of an artery. So if you have to draw the structure of an artery, take out your pencils. Let us try drawing the diagram of an artery, the structure of an artery. This one is not at all 10th ICSE friendly. बाकी कोई भी क्लास में ये प्रॉब्लम नहीं करता, ओनली 10th ICSE में। पता है क्यों? So we are talking about this. We are talking about the sections of the artery, vein, capillary. This is very, very important for you. Now, Abhi, you may also write, as I said, you will get diagrams in your exam 1 and then 2 and then 3. Okay, and you will be asked in your paper, label the parts 1 to 3. Label the parts 1 to 3. Basic thing is, the most important thing is you should always write out the composition. Okay. ये क्या है तुम्हारा? आज कौन सा स्पेशल तुम्हारा वाटर बॉटल लेके आए हो जो म्यूजिक देगा? So now that we are talking about 1, 2, 3, I can also write 1 as tunica externa, tunica media, tunica interna or intima. Either of the two you are supposed to write. या तो ये composition लिखो. This is the most acceptable answer. This is what we are actually looking for. ठीक है, अगर ये याद नहीं है तो ये लिखो, but don't ever write external, middle and inner layer. वो नहीं लिखना है. You will not get any mark for that. Because external, middle and inner layer तो कोई 4th standard, 3rd standard के बच्चे को भी सिखाएगा, then also that child can write, no? Everybody knows that this is the external and the middle and the inner. You are not supposed. Many students would write this. They don't get any mark there. You are not supposed to write. What happened, Sohan? You're so tired today. So now, when we are talking about not to write external, medial, and inner layer at all, either you write this way or most preferably write this one. Connective tissue, smooth muscles and elastic fibers, endothelium. Now, one thing that is absent in the vein is elastic fibers are not well developed in the veins you have. Smooth muscles are there, but elastic fibers are not well developed in the veins. So first thing that we try understanding now with reference to the blood vessels. Yeah, these are the 4 blood vessels with reference to the heart, but all over the body, if you try understanding, there are the arteries, veins, capillaries. Arteries, which are now the major features that we are going to talk about, are the reference with the veins. Let us now learn some major features of all these different types of vessels all over our body. If I talk about the arteries now, remember some major differences to talk about. Some major differences to talk about. I will tell you the differences. You are going to understand and write. 5 differences that I speak now. Major 5 differences. So I'm talking about that, first of all, on the wall thickness. Based on the wall thickness and the lumen, based on the wall thickness and lumen, the first point that you're going to write is the wall of the arteries are thick or thin, comparatively thick. The wall of the arteries are thick, lumen is narrow. The wall of the veins are thinner and lumen is wide. Then next is, what about the pressure of the blood? Now since the lumen is narrow, obviously the pressure of the blood is high. Pressure of the blood is high, and this is also added on to the directional flow. So first, second point you are going to write down. Okay, about the directional flow I'm going to talk about in the next point. So I said that first you will write about the wall, and then the second point you write that the blood flowing in the arteries are always at a much higher pressure. Blood flowing in the vein always at a lower pressure. Next is the direction of the flow. What is the meaning of this? Direction of the flow, when I talk about from where to where is the blood flowing? In majority of the arteries of the body, the blood is actually flowing from the heart to the body organs. And majority of our body organs are below the heart. Majority of our body organs are below the heart, except for the shoulders and the neck and the face and the brain that we talk about. Majority of the body organs are all below the heart. So the blood is, as it is flowing along the force of gravity. So hence the pressure is more. But if I talk about the vein, the blood which is being brought up from the legs and the toes and the kidneys and then the stomach and the intestine, the blood has to move against gravity. That is also the reason why the pressure is low. The force is much lesser. And now that you are going to talk about the third point, what do you write? Direction of flow. For an artery, the blood is always flowing from the heart to the body tissues. For a vein, the blood is flowing always from the body tissues to the heart. What is the fourth difference, major difference that you write? If it is the artery, we are always supposed to carry oxygenated or deoxygenated blood. If it is an artery, it is always supposed to carry oxygenated blood, the type of blood, that's the fourth point that you write. So if it is an artery, it is always supposed to carry oxygenated. And if it is a vein, it is always supposed to carry deoxygenated, but there are exceptions. That has to be mentioned when you write down the difference. Exception is a pulmonary artery and exception is a pulmonary vein. Understood? So exception is the pulmonary artery and the pulmonary vein. Then next is, when we talk about the arteries and the vein, something more that you try to understand as differences is that when we are talking about, okay, now here this take a note before I forget. Oxygenated and deoxygenated, what do you understand? When I say oxygenated blood, what do you understand?
Oxygen.
Higher than the CO2.
Proportion, yeah, the concentration of oxygen. So if you get a definition, define oxygenated blood, what are you supposed to write?
Concentration of oxygen is higher than CO2.
Higher. So do you understand when I say oxygenated blood brought from the lungs, am I talking about 98% oxygen and 2% carbon dioxide? How it is basically? Very less. The difference is not too big. Remember, when I talk about a concept of oxygenated blood, maybe I'm trying to understand oxygenated blood perhaps will contain proportion of oxygen something, if it is 55, then the other side carbon dioxide is just 45. And if I'm talking about deoxygenated blood, yes, carbon rich blood I understand, carbon dioxide rich blood I understand. But again, am I talking about 90 or 10? No, not that remarkable difference. But I'm only talking about maybe if it is deoxygenated blood and if it is having something around 52% of carbon dioxide, then just little bit less of oxygen. Something like 48 or 40, like that. The difference is not big and remarkable to understand. So that's the reason the definition also that you write should be reflecting that concept. What is the definition of oxygenated blood that I write? Blood which has a comparatively higher proportion of oxygen than carbon dioxide. Oxygenated blood which has comparatively a higher proportion of carbon dioxide than oxygen is deoxygenate. So that is what you write down. Arteries, another point, you have to write down about the location. When I write down location of arteries, there are many differences, at least 5 to 6 differences you should know. When I talk about the arteries, where do we get to see are we able to see the arteries of our body? Are we able to see the arteries of our body anyway? Arteries we don't see. Why? Because the arteries are deeply seated. What is the meaning of deeply seated? They are deep inside the tissues and they constantly keep on breaking up into capillaries. But if I talk about veins, are we able to see veins? Yes, we are, because they are superficial. The veins are superficial because the veins are coming over the tissues and on the way to the heart. So that's the location that we are going to write down. And something more, when I talk about the color of the blood. The color of the blood in an artery, what about the color of the blood in an artery? Light red. The color of the blood in an artery, light red, because it is oxygen rich, comparatively oxygen rich. And color of the blood in a vein? Dark red, because it is venous. The blood is venous blood, carbon dioxide rich blood. No, it is carbon dioxide rich blood. So these are some of the differences that we should understand. Then here, when I talk about some relation of these 3 terms, I start this way, or I would start with aorta. I would start with aorta, and then aorta should be dividing into a large number of arteries. Arteries would always divide, resulting in the formation of arterioles. Arterioles would divide, resulting in the formation of capillaries. Now when I talk about I talk about an arteriole which is dividing into a large number of capillaries this way. Then what is nearby? Here we are talking about the way did this get divided into capillaries. It got divided into capillaries on the body tissues whenever it is approaching the body tissues. The next one, yes, this again will unite. This capillary network will again unite. They are again going to unite this way, resulting in the formation of a vein. They will again unite this way, resulting in the formation of a vein. And if I understand, then this vein, first of all, if these are the capillaries, first of all, they would result in the formation of venules, and then we talk about the veins, and then the vena cava, and then we talk about the heart valve. So that is the relation when we are talking about all these terms one after the other. So I said, while you are moving towards the tissue, what are the sequence? Aorta to capillaries, what are the terms that you have to remember? So, so far, when I talk about a capillary which is moving towards the tissue, what type of blood? Oxygenated. But if the capillaries are moving on the way away from the tissues and going towards the heart, the type of blood now that they carry is deoxygenated. And the concept what is happening here is nothing but simple diffusion of oxygen, carbon dioxide, etc. that you understand. So this is about the concept of vessels. Now we talk about the valves. Again, we go back to the concept of valves now, the structure of the heart to understand. Now, I was already saying that if I talk about the blood moving from the legs to the heart, the blood is moving from the legs to the heart. If I talk about this vessel, something in a longitudinal way, a vertical section, if I try to understand. And I'm saying that these are the legs or the toes, and this is the heart that I understand. And the blood which is rising up, is it not possible that the blood may again come back? Yes, it is possible, because the blood has to move high up, and the blood has to move against the gravity. So there is always a chance that the blood goes up a little bit and again drops back. The blood goes up and drops back. And if this is actually true, and if this happens in our body, by the time a small amount of blood from our toes, from our legs goes up to the heart, it will take more than a day. But actually, does it happen? No, it does not happen. The blood moves up in a short period of time. The heart should be filled up, and again should start the process of pumping. If adequate amount of blood would not reach the heart, the process of pumping would become slow. But that does not happen. So if it is not happening, we are very much sure that the adequate amount of blood is every time filling up in the heart. So how is it possible that every small amount of blood is reaching the heart also in adequate specific time period, but that also understanding that the veins have pressure of the blood quite low, the lumen quite wide, and all these features that we understood. The reason is what? The reason is the presence of some cup-shaped structures, and what are these cup-shaped structures called? Valves. So as and when the blood would move up, what is happening? These cup-shaped structures are getting filled with the blood, and as they get filled with blood, when the blood was not adequate in those cup-shaped structures, what was happening? Since the cup-shaped structures were not having adequate amount of those blood here, these cup-shaped structures, which are nothing but the membranous glands, they were more or less, these cup-shaped structures were more or less contracted. They were more or less contracted. Just a minute. I take a break for 2 minutes. By the time we do some questions. I'll come back. Completed this page number 111. 111 page. What is this question number 3? Complete with 3. By the time I come back. Same. I just come back.
स्ट्रक्चर वाला
हाँ
क्वेश्चन
अपना क्वेश्चन
तुम लोग का
तुम लोग का पेज नंबर 71 क्वेश्चन 7121
ये इधर से
ABC
मेरे बुक में मार्क्स नहीं है मार्क्स के लिए तेरे को सबसे इसके
अरे ये अच्छा ये कहाँ से आता है ये बता हाँ ये मुझसे सुना
ये तो क्या नहीं अबे लेकिन आगे स्लो नहीं है क्योंकि इसे इंटरव्यू ये सबसे पहले रहता है
Complete that. We'll continue. Once you are done, tell me. Got no answers of all. Did you get the answers for all? बोलो अच्छा she has a doubt why she can't say प्रशंसा बोलो डाउट तुम्हारा है क्या निहाली का है निहाली को तो कोई डाउट नहीं है बोलो निहाली
She is asking do capillaries join arteries and veins.
do
Capillaries join arteries and veins.
Do capillaries join arteries and veins? Yes, capillaries join arteries and veins. That's the diagram I was showing you. If you talk about a capillary, where is the capillary? Always on the tissues. On one side of the tissue is the vein, and the other side of the tissue is the artery. So if I have to draw any diagram of the tissues, how should I draw? If it is a tissue that I understand, this is a capillary, this is an artery, and this artery will get divided into large numbers of capillaries. It will get divided into large number of capillaries. These capillaries are giving oxygen from the blood. Oxygen is coming from the tissue. Carbon dioxide is entering. And these capillaries will again unite to form the vein. So this is an artery, this is a vein, in between are the capillaries. No? Done? Got the answers? Okay, chalo, let's continue. If that much is okay, now let us complete with valve. Look at the structure of the heart back. To understand how many valves, which type of valves, and their function, location, etc. So the first that I talk about is tricuspid valve. What are you supposed to understand for the tricuspid valve? What about its location and what type of, or what about its location and the direction of the blood flow? When does it contract? When does it relax? I start with the first one, tricuspid valve. The first thing to understand here is, when I talk about tricuspid valve, first thing is the right auricle, when it gets blood, it takes in blood, it starts filling blood, and the right auricle starts expanding. The right auricle now gets blood from the vena cava, and it will start filling blood, it will start expanding. As it starts expanding, this phase of the heart is known as diastole. What is the meaning of diastole? Relaxation of the heart walls, expansion of the heart walls. But now, when I talk about the expansion of the heart walls, is there any limit? Yes, it is. The heart walls will expand till a limit. The blood will fill here till a limit. So now, as I said, yes, the blood is entering, the blood is entering, the blood is filling here. The relaxation, or I would say, the diastole of the right auricle is happening. But till a limit, no. Now, when the filling was happening, this tricuspid valves, which are nothing but muscular flaps, these are muscular flaps. Now, this muscular flaps, they were, if I talk about the structure of the heart, suppose something like this. When I talk about the structure of the heart, this tricuspid valve, when this chamber was filling blood, the tricuspid valve, will it remain relaxed or it will remain contracted? It will remain relaxed. So first of all, when it is filling blood, should I draw the diagram this way? No, it should be almost closed. They are almost closed, like this relaxation of the valve. They are closed. When it has almost reached that threshold, when it cannot contain any more blood, now the tricuspid valve contracts and makes a passage. Now it contracts, makes a passage, and the blood will flow down. Now, to allow the blood flow down from here to here, what has happened? This chamber should undergo the process of contraction. This is called systole. What is the meaning of systole? Definition of systole. Systole means contraction of the heart walls. Contraction of the heart wall, systole. Relaxation of the heart wall, diastole. Always to understand, heart, when one chamber contracts, the other will relax. So now I am talking about contraction of this, systole of this, matlab diastole of this. Now, systole of this means diastole of this. So now this is undergoing systole, these valves open up, the blood is filling here. When the blood is filling here, diastole of the right ventricle happening. After some time, this will again relax and close back. By the time the blood, adequate amount of blood has flowed down here, this will close back. Why? Prevent the backflow. It will close down. When it closes down, an appreciable amount of blood has filled in. Then what about the next region? These valves will start undergoing contraction. Which valve I am talking about now? The next valve that I talk about which undergoes contraction is now the pulmonary semilunar. Is that there in your figure? Pulmonary semilunar valve now contracts. What I said, by the time an appreciable amount of blood fills in here, right ventricular systole happens, which valve will now start contracting? Pulmonary semilunar. Why? Because now the blood has to move out some way. The blood has to find a way because this is already blocked. The blood cannot go back. Now the blood starts moving away. And the blood starts moving away. First of all, the pulmonary artery starts as a single branch, single tube, and then branches. The moment it leaves the heart, it branches into the right and the left tube. So now, This pulmonary artery will take the right and the left branch to enter the right and the left lung. Now the rest is already understood. Now what type of blood is the pulmonary artery carrying? Deoxygenated. And as the blood enters or passes by the lungs, process of oxygenation and the blood is pure. Now we again come back. That by the way of the pulmonary vein, the blood is now entering where? Into the left auricle. When the blood is filling in the left auricle, which phase of the left auricle is it? Diastole of the left auricle, filling up, expansion phase, no? Diastole. So when it is diastole, this valve, now which valve we are talking about? Bicuspid or the mitral valve. Bicuspid or the mitral valve. Bicuspid valve is also known as mitral valve, remember. So the bicuspid or the mitral valve, it will undergo the process of contraction and open up. The blood flows down here. As the blood flows down here, the blood is flowing down here. What phase now? Systole. Systole of the left auricle, followed by diastole. And what is the last set of valves that you have to remember? Now that the blood almost filling up, this is relaxed and closed. This gate is closed, cannot go. No backflow. So since now no backflow, the blood will start moving this way, because by that time, this valve, which valve I'm talking about, now the fourth valve that we understand is the aortic semilunar. Now this aortic semilunar valve now contracts, makes a pathway, and now this valve goes into this. But by the time the blood is filled up here, the amount of blood that fills up here is almost the same, but then the force of contraction is much bigger, much higher, more intense as compared to this, because the amount of because at this particular region there are some specialized muscles, there are some specialized when we are talking about if I talk about this wall and this wall, there's a difference, because addition to the cardiac muscle which the entire heart has, there are additional nerve supply and some specialized type of cardiac fibers, also known as the Purkinje fibers. So now, when we are talking about this Purkinje fibers, which are all maximally arranged here, that's why the force of contraction is more intense. And that's why this particular chamber contracts vigorously. Because why is it also necessary? Because the blood has to flow to the furthest regions of the body, from here, from the heart till the toes. Furthest regions of the body. And here, the force of contraction is comparatively mild, because the blood has to move only from the heart to the lungs, which are nearby. So that is there. Now, when I talk about the aorta, yes, the aorta will again divide into a large number of arteries. I was talking about the previous flow chart also that I drew. The aorta will divide into a large number of arteries, also known as, also including the carotid artery. So if I have to talk about that, yes, this aorta is dividing into a large number of arteries supplying blood to every different tissue of the body. But is it not the heart wall is also in need of oxygenated blood? Yes, the heart wall itself is in need of oxygen. The heart wall is also in need of oxygen, because the heart wall also constantly should be contracting, relaxing. So that's the reason it needs oxygen. So which particular branch will supply that oxygenated blood to the heart wall is the carotid artery, and carotid artery itself is a branch of the aorta. So if I have to name some of them, just try to understand what I'm speaking. I'm saying, if I have to talk about the artery here, the aorta, yes, the aorta will now divide into so many branches. The aorta can divide or does divide into so many branches. I can understand something like the gastric artery, say suppose. The gastric artery, then we talk about the renal artery, then we talk about the splenic artery, and we talk about the mesenteric artery, so many and many more that we are talking about, the carotid artery, etc., etc. There are so many. So this aorta divides into large number of arteries supplying oxygenated blood. And the next is that yes, every single artery will again divide into a large number of arterioles. The same concept that we have studied in kidneys also. That when the renal artery enters into the nephrons, again it divides into a large number of branches. Arterioles, again it divides into a large number of branches. The glomerular capillaries, no. So that concept is applicable for every tissue. The artery will divide into arterioles and arterioles will divide into capillaries. So this concept is not only for the kidneys but for every particular tissue that you understand. So this is there. Now we were talking about that yes, I had been constantly stressing on this, saying that when this relaxes, this is closed. When this is almost on the verge of contraction, this opens up. Then the blood flows down. And once this is filling up, this again closes. And the blood goes down. So every time, every moment, we get to sense that one valve is closing, one valve is opening. One valve is closing, one valve is opening. What are these called? These are called heard sounds. These are called heard sounds. So, are we able to hear these sounds? Yes, we can with the help of the stethoscopes that the doctors use. No, so when we are talking about this, and when we or if anybody goes through all those different type of those echocardiograms and all, yes, those type of sounds are very very clearly heard in those in monitor, because it's a live screening that we can see. So when we are talking about those, either with the help of those devices, or when we are talking about echocardiogram, echo imaging that we do, all these different type of conditions are there, devices are there which can help us to understand heard sounds. Then which are those two heard sounds that we have to understand? I'm sorry, we are talking about the love sound and the dove sound. What is the meaning of this love sound? What is love sound referring to? Love sound refers to, when we are talking about the love sound, refers to closure of the atrioventricular valves. Atrioventricular. What is the meaning of the atrioventricular? Atrioventricular valves. Atrioventricular valve. Tricuspid is a atrioventricular valve. Tricuspid is a atrioventricular. What is the meaning of atrioventricular? Between the auricle and the ventricle. Can you name one more atrioventricular valve? Bicuspid is another one. Bicuspid is another one. So in this structure, which are the two atrioventricular valves? Tricuspid and bicuspid. And when do you get to see the dove sound? Closure of the semilunar valves. Now, which are the two semilunar valves? Pulmonary and aortic. Ectopulmonary and aortic. So now you tell me, if I say that love sound is because of the closure of the tricuspid and bicuspid, and when the tricuspid and bicuspid is closed, which two valves are open? Semilunar valves are open. And when the semilunar valves are closed, atrioventricular are open. This is always vice versa. अगर ये open है तो ये close रहना ही पड़ेगा. Otherwise, there's a problem in that. If this is open, this has to be closed. If this is closed, this has to be open. Then only the blood can flow in a unidirectional manner. Now, what I explained to you, if you have followed and understood, tell me now. Right start from the body tissues. Right start from the body tissues. What is the complete sequence in which the blood should flow? Right from the body tissues, what is the complete sequence of the blood that it should flow? I start with a concept of body tissues. I start with a concept of body tissues, and body tissues are giving away blood, yes, by the way of veins, and then the veins would connect to form vena cava, and vena cava will give the blood to right auricle. It should give the blood to right auricle. Then the blood goes right right ventricle, and in between which valve? Tricuspid ventricle. Okay. Then from the right ventricle, by the way of pulmonary artery. So by the way of pulmonary artery, where is it going? It is going to the lungs. And in the lungs, the process of oxygenation that you understand by the way of pulmonary veins. Where is it entering now? Left auricle. It is entering the left auricle. From the left auricle, where does it go? Left ventricle. Which valve is important here? The bicuspid valve. From the left ventricle, aorta. Which valve? Aortic semilunar. And then from the aorta, by the way of variety of arteries, and then by the way of variety of capillaries. Arterioles also, of course, come in between. I skip that right now. And that we talk about. Okay, I'm sorry. We talk about the arteries, and then we talk about the capillaries, and then again by the way of the capillaries, and then the blood is again coming here. So if we talk about a schematic situation, something like this, first of all, let us try to understand this part. That if I am talking about the circulation of the blood between the heart and the lungs and back to the heart. Circulation of the blood from the heart to the lungs and back to the heart. This much if I talk about, this is what is pulmonary circulation. What am I talking about? I am talking about a circulation of the blood that is happening, movement of the blood that is happening from the heart to the lungs and back to the heart. So this much is what is known as pulmonary circulation. This much what is known as pulmonary circulation. What about the next part? Let us see. From the heart to the body tissues and back to the heart. From the heart to body tissues and back to heart. This is what is called systemic circulation. So what I said, what is systemic circulation? The circulation of the blood from the heart to the body tissues and back to heart. This is what we are talking about, systemic circulation. So now if I talk about pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation, this would result in what we are talking about, a concept of double circulation of the mammalian heart. So what are the two phases of double circulation? Pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. But why are we talking about double circulation here? Why the concept of double circulation? Because the blood is coming into the heart, leaving the heart to go to the lungs, and then again coming into the heart and going to the body tissues. So at any particular period of time, is it not the blood entering, leaving, and again entering? By the way of the tissues and the veins, it is entering, going to the lungs, leaving, and again entering, and then again going to the tissues. So any time, any moment, if you talk about the scheme of circulation that is happening in our body, any unit of blood constantly enters our heart twice. It enters the right side as deoxygenated, goes out to the lungs and come back again as oxygenated, goes out to body tissues and again enters as deoxygenated. This cycle goes on and on and on. So in this reference already we have talked about the heart sounds, and we have already talked about the diastole and the systolic phases of the heart. So this is what we are talking about as a concept of double circulation. Take this figure in your book also. You get questions on this. Labeling of the parts. Labeling of the parts. Very, very important. So here, when I talk about, this is what I explained to you with this flow chart. This is what it is here. So I started talking about the body tissues. I started with body tissues, and then by the way of the vein. And what is this? What is this vessel? vena cava. Very close to the heart is the vena cava. Enter the right side, go by the way of the pulmonary artery, and this pulmonary artery divides into the right branch and the left branch. Go to the left and then right lung, and then they will all unite together and enter into the left auricle and the left ventricle, and then which is this branch vessel? Aorta. Aorta go out, and then they are dividing into large number of arteries going to the tissues, and then again from the upper body, lower body, entering into which chamber? Right auricle always. So this is about the concept of double circulation that you have to understand. Now, if I have to talk about, I say for क्या हो गया? Nihali? She wanted to? बहुत अच्छा लगा ये picture. कौन सा? The previous one, you liked it so much, so colorful it is. Biology is all about colors. हाँ ये बाबा, मेरा भी ले लो हाँ. Am I looking good? She will not take my such a horrible teacher. Fatakat karo. See the students of this generation, they are clicking photos. Our teachers would have slapped us like anything. And you have not that same voice to take a picture. Right? Now, when we are talking about, now today, I still find certain things with you and even my daughter. My daughter doesn't want to go to school because she doesn't like the partner with whom she is sitting. The teacher gave a partner that was a boy. And she hates that boy like anything, and you know which standard she is in the third standard. I don't even remember the day when I had any choice about the partner in the who is sitting beside, boy, girl, nothing. So many choices you all have nowadays. Okay, just finish with this, that when I talk about this scheme of circulation, so what I'm telling you repeatedly, that when the blood is going out from the aorta by the way of the artery, it should enter where? Any tissue. When the blood is coming out from the tissue, straight away by the way of the capillary, it should go into the vein and then come into the heart. Exceptions are when you talk about the capillaries coming out from the stomach and the intestine. Capillaries coming out from the stomach and the intestine. Say suppose I talk about any particular capillary coming out from the stomach or intestine. See here, I'm talking about the capillaries which are coming out from the stomach or the intestine. If I talk about a capillary coming out from or a vein coming out from the stomach, I would say gastric vein, and a vein coming out from the intestine, I would say mesenteric vein. So normally if I talk about the renal vein coming out from the kidney, it should straight away go to the heart. But these veins, especially if I talk about the gastric vein and the mesenteric vein, do they straight away go to the heart? No, they would straight away not go to the heart, but they would first of all enter into the liver. Why do they enter into the liver? To deposit the nutrients, because these are the organs where the process of digestion absorption has happened, and the blood which is coming out from these organs are loaded with nutrients. So this arteries or this particular veins, if I talk about the hepatic vein, see here, which is entering from the stomach and the intestine, carrying nutrients, first of all has to be deposited into the liver. First of all will be deposited in the liver. So I would say that first of all, if I have to understand what is the significance, or why is this portal vein, hepatic portal vein, why is it so special? This hepatic portal vein is formed by the union of the vein coming from the stomach and the intestine, and then it enters into the liver. And why is it entering into the liver before it comes to the heart? To deposit all the nutrients, and then by the way of the hepatic vein, it will come again into the vena cava. Then the hepatic vein which comes out from the liver unites with the vena cava and then drop the blood into the heart. So that's an exception. When I'm talking about veins coming out from the stomach and the intestine, they would first unite from the portal vein and then the hepatic portal vein, and then deposit nutrients into the liver, and then go and form the vena cava to join the heart. Okay, so this is a schematic figure that you have to remember. You have in your book also, just check it out. So I'm talking about these veins, okay, hepatic portal vein. What is hepatic portal vein? Vein formed by the union of the veins coming out from the stomach and the intestine. and then from the liver you get the hepatic veins. So what I told you, what is the difference between hepatic portal and hepatic vein? Hepatic portal vein carries nutrients from the stomach intestine. Hepatic vein on the way to heart. It is already on the way to heart. We'll wind up here. Continue again next class. When is your exam? October.
27th September.
27 September. Thank you. 27 September. This chapter is there, no? This Monday. So this chapter was there. Yeah. What chapter was there? That's not your minute. Excretory system. No minute. Excretory system is not finished. For this chapter, the major part is all done. Now the rest is just new definition. So the excretory system is just read and find out. Also, the excretory system is a bit because I also learned it. But yours is still that, no?
Yes, ma'am. We have time, but that chapter is going to learn it first. It was not very easy.
So this chapter now we have definition very much. Excretory system we control like how much there was how many of you are there? In case any doubt is there, you can connect me to the coordinator. Doubts are there, you can ask me doubts. Okay? You can tell me.